In a time where truth and faith intertwine, a mystery emerges that challenges centuries of beliefs. Ancient manuscripts hidden in the shadows of history offer a surprising insight into Jesus Christ, far beyond what the holy books reveal. These texts, banned by the Church, promise to reveal a human side of the Messiah, a Jesus with flaws, fears, and even dark secrets that tradition preferred to silence. Why were these documents hidden? What do religious authorities fear when exposing such a complex figure? As we explore these manuscripts, the figure of Jesus transforms, revealing a narrative rich in nuances and mysteries. Each page is a window into a past that defies accepted reality. As fragments of these texts are unearthed, new questions arise. Could it be possible that Jesus' true identity was hidden beneath layers of dogma? What else is the Church trying to hide? Get ready for an intriguing journey, where the search for truth could change everything you believe about the man from Nazareth and his legacy. Banned manuscripts are a fascinating part of religious history, especially when we talk about Jesus. These texts, which include works such as the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, emerged in a very rich cultural context. At the beginning of Christianity, there was a great diversity of beliefs and interpretations about who Jesus was. Some of these views were so different from those that became dominant that they were eventually censored by the early Church. Many of these manuscripts were written at a time when the Christian community was still forming. Thus, they reflected a search for answers to the existential questions that many asked about the life, death, and role of Jesus. Censorship emerged as a way to protect a more consistent and controlled narrative, which favored the image of a divine and perfect Jesus. However, in doing so, the Church also left out alternative voices that could enrich the understanding of its message. This leads us to think about what these texts could teach us. They bring to light a vision of Jesus that is much more human, full of dilemmas and complexities. This approach contrasts sharply with the traditional image many have of him as an impeccable Messiah. By exploring these manuscripts, we can see a Jesus who faces conflicts and challenges, which makes him more accessible and close to us. Another interesting aspect is the way these texts have been treated throughout history. The Church not only banned these writings, but also neglected them, keeping them in almost complete silence for centuries. Even so, some of them survived, saved in translations and handmade copies. This shows us that even in the face of censorship, the quest to understand the true nature of Jesus never completely disappeared. Thus, the story of banned manuscripts is more than just a question of censorship and control. It's also about the human desire to connect with something greater. These texts offer us an opportunity to reflect on our own beliefs and on the figure of Jesus, who continues to inspire and challenge people throughout the centuries. The banned manuscripts present us with a vision of Jesus that is, in some ways, revolutionary. Rather than a perfect Messiah, these texts reveal a Jesus who is more human, with weaknesses and dilemmas that many of us face. This approach is especially interesting because it challenges the traditional idea that Jesus was free from errors and flaws. Through these narratives, we can glimpse a Jesus who cares, who feels pain, and who often seeks answers just like us. In the Gospel of Thomas, for example, we find teachings that highlight the importance of self-knowledge and personal reflection. Jesus is presented as a spiritual guide who encourages his followers to look within themselves rather than simply accepting imposed dogmas. This idea that everyone has their own spiritual journey is a perspective that resonates deeply with many contemporary schools of thought. On the other hand, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene brings to light the figure of a strong and wise woman who plays a central role in understanding Jesus' teachings. This not only challenges the patriarchal norms of the time, but also shows us that Jesus' message can be interpreted in different ways depending on who tells it. This diversity of voices enriches the narrative and offers new ways of understanding what it means to be a follower of Jesus. These alternative representations of Jesus also invite us to question our own beliefs. If Jesus was, in fact, a more human figure, what does this mean for our understanding of spirituality? We can feel more connected to a Jesus who also faced hardship and uncertainty rather than a distant divine being. This identification can help us develop a more personal and intimate relationship with the teachings of Jesus. These alternative representations are a reminder that the search for meaning and understanding is an ongoing journey. The banned manuscripts offer us a valuable opportunity to reevaluate the figure of Jesus, and in doing so we can find new paths of faith and spirituality that resonate with our own life experiences. As we examine the banned manuscripts, we find passages that reveal Jesus' connection to supernatural events and mystical teachings. These texts often challenge the Church's orthodox view of Jesus' divinity, presenting a narrative that includes esoteric elements and other dimensions of spirituality. This approach can be seen as a threat to established Christian dogma, which sought a more rigid and uniform interpretation of the figure of Jesus. These mystical interpretations are fascinating because they show us a Jesus who is not just a religious leader, but also someone who connects with forces beyond our understanding. Passages that speak of transcendental experiences and spiritual revelations suggest that Jesus had a deep understanding of the universe and the human condition. This vision expands the notion of who he was and what his teachings really meant. Furthermore, many of the texts that talk about these supernatural experiences emphasize the importance of personal and direct experience with the divine. They encourage followers to seek enlightenment and self-knowledge rather than limiting themselves to dogma or tradition. This search for inner truth resonates with many contemporary spiritual practices, which value individual experience over collective beliefs. However, the emphasis on mystical and esoteric aspects also raises questions about the authenticity and relevance of these texts. To some, these elements may seem strange or even disturbing. This generates debates about what really constitutes the essence of Jesus' teaching and how we can interpret it in light of our own spiritual experiences. In short, the supernatural and mystical interpretations of the banned manuscripts offer us a new lens through which to understand Jesus. They challenge us to expand our understanding of spirituality and to consider personal experiences as a fundamental part of the journey of faith. In doing so, we can discover new layers of meaning in the life and teachings of Jesus that continue to resonate with the issues we face today. The early church had a clear mission: to establish a uniform doctrine that could be accepted by all Christians. With this in mind, any text that threatened this unity was seen as a potential problem. Manuscripts that presented alternative views of Jesus, such as the Gospel of Thomas, were quickly considered dangerous. The divergence in the narratives could generate confusion among the faithful, something that the ecclesiastical leadership wanted to avoid at all costs. Furthermore, the quest for power and influence also played an important role. The church needed to control the interpretation of Christ's teachings to legitimize its own authority. By banning texts that might question the divine nature of Jesus or present a more human view of him, the church ensured that its interpretations were the only ones accepted. This control allowed the institution to shape the Christian faith in its image, avoiding dissent that could weaken its position. The censorship also reflected a deep fear that the ideas contained in these manuscripts could inspire heretical movements. The emergence of sects or groups that interpreted the Christian message differently was a major concern. Thus, the church decided that it was safer to eliminate these texts than risk their ideas spreading and destabilizing the Christian community. Another reason that prompted censorship was the need to consolidate Christian identity in a world full of diverse philosophies and religions. With the growth of Christianity, ecclesiastical leaders felt pressure to defend the uniqueness of the Christian faith. Manuscripts that presented Jesus differently could be misinterpreted or used to justify beliefs that did not align with official dogma. The censorship of banned manuscripts was a deliberate strategy to shape the Christian narrative. The church not only sought uniformity, but also wanted to ensure that Jesus' message was presented in a way that strengthened its own position. By silencing alternative voices, church leadership sought to preserve the integrity of the faith that was being formed, even if this meant erasing parts of history that did not fit their vision. The rediscovery of the banned manuscripts brought to light new perspectives that challenged traditional understandings of Christian theology. With the dissemination of texts, such as the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, many began to question the way Jesus and his teachings were interpreted. This new vision allowed scholars and believers to review the figure of Jesus in a more inclusive and understanding light, opening space for deeper discussions about his message. Furthermore, the influence of these manuscripts extended beyond the walls of traditional churches. Alternative spirituality movements and new currents of religious thought began to adopt ideas that appeared in these texts. The image of a more human Jesus, who faces dilemmas and questions, resonated with many people looking for a more authentic connection with spirituality. This has led to a growing interest in exploring spirituality in a more personal and less dogmatic way. The discussions generated by the rediscovery of these texts also influenced interreligious dialogue. The idea that different traditions can have valid interpretations of the figure of Jesus helped to promote an environment of respect and understanding between different beliefs. This is especially relevant in an increasingly pluralistic world where tolerance and acceptance are fundamental to peaceful coexistence. As academic research into these manuscripts advanced, many began to realize that theology is not a fixed discipline, but an area in constant evolution. New interpretations and discoveries challenge the status quo and encourage an ongoing search for meaning and truth. Thus, the rediscovery of the banned manuscripts not only influenced theology, but also encouraged a movement of openness and dialogue that can enrich modern spirituality. In short, the influence of banned manuscripts goes beyond academia. It directly impacts the spiritual lives of many people who now have access to a more diverse and complex vision of Jesus. This search for a more inclusive understanding invites everyone to reflect on their own beliefs and consider new ways of connecting with the sacred. Academic debates about banned manuscripts are intense and varied. Theologians, historians, and scholars are divided in their opinions about the authenticity of these texts. Some argue that these manuscripts, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, contain valuable truths that can offer a new perspective on the figure of Jesus. They argue that these texts, often considered heretical, reveal a more human and accessible side of the Messiah, which contrasts with a traditional view. For these scholars, the analysis of these documents is essential to understand the complexity of the origins of Christianity. On the other hand, there are those who dispute the validity of these manuscripts. These critics point out that many texts were written long after Jesus' death, and that their narratives may be distorted by specific theological intentions. For them, the lack of solid evidence proving the authenticity of certain reports is reason enough to discredit their claims. This more skeptical view highlights the difficulty in separating history from mythology, especially in a context full of beliefs and superstitions. In addition to questions of authenticity, the relevance of these texts for understanding Jesus also generates controversy. Some scholars believe that the alternative representations of Jesus found in these manuscripts are crucial to a more complete understanding of the historical figure. They argue that by ignoring these texts, a significant part of the Christian narrative that could enrich contemporary faith is lost. Others, however, argue that these interpretations can divert Christian practice from the tradition's central teachings. The disputes surrounding the interpretation of the manuscripts also reflect a larger struggle between different theological currents. For example, while some groups advocate a more liberal and inclusive vision, others prefer to maintain traditional orthodoxy. These conflicts are not limited to academia. They also permeate religious communities, where heated debates arise over what constitutes the true message of Jesus. Such tensions reveal how history and theology are interconnected, influencing the spirituality of many people to this day. These controversies are not just about ancient texts. They touch on fundamental questions of faith, belief, and identity. As new discoveries about the manuscripts are made, the discussion intensifies, leading to a constant re-examination of established traditions. Thus, the study of these texts not only offers a glimpse into the past, but also provokes deep reflections on how we understand and live our spirituality in the present. As we explore the depths of these banned manuscripts, we are faced with an intriguing question. Who really was Jesus? The apocryphal texts reveal a figure that goes far beyond the traditional image we know. They present a Jesus who lived, loved, and even made mistakes, humanizing the divine. What if everything we were taught was just the tip of the iceberg? The Catholic Church, guardian of the faith for centuries, has a powerful reason to hide these secrets. What are they afraid we discovered? What truths about the life and teachings of Jesus are so impactful that they need to be silenced? Imagine if, at the end of this journey, you found answers that changed your perception about spirituality and faith. What other revelations might be hidden in the shadows of history? Stay tuned, as there is still a lot to be revealed. The mysteries of Jesus and the secrets of the Vatican are intertwined in ways few dare imagine. And you? Are you willing to question everything you know and delve deeper into the mysteries surrounding the most influential figure in history? Let's continue this discussion in the comments and discover together what else might be hiding beneath the surface.